Get the most complete tiling DVD ever developed. Planning, installation, regulations, maintenance, and more. Buy it today at agphd.com and order your copy of my new book, $100 an Hour Jobs, Lessons from Dad, all at agphd.com.
This week's weed is definitely one of my favorites, Brian, because it's almost impossible to kill, and it's been around since prehistoric times?
Yep, been around since the dinosaurs were here, and actually it was one of the worst weed problems back then. Well, that's what they say. I have no idea. All I know is our weed of the week is Scouring Rush. It looks very similar to horsetail. They're both in the same family, and the trouble with these weeds is they're perennial weeds, the Scouring Rush and the horsetail, and they really don't have leaves on them. Like Scouring Rush, it's just a single stem out there. How are you going to stick chemical on that to kill it?
Well, when I was a kid, it was one of those weeds that you would always go pull because it was kind of interesting to play with. Scouring Rush had different little joints, and you could just pop them apart, and it made a little sound sometimes when you pulled them apart. And it was hollow up the middle, so it was really kind of like a straw. It doesn't have leaves. It doesn't have hairs on it. It's almost impossible to stick things to. So when you're going to be spraying for Scouring Rush, using some kind of surfactant with it to make it sticky, I feel is important. And using less water is also important, because if you don't have leaves, you really don't want to have a lot of spray volume out there, because there isn't going to be much surface area to stick it to.
Yep, and you can say, well, I'll just go out with tillage. Well, that's fine, but it's got a big perennial root system, so you're not really going to help yourself out a lot.
Yeah, you chop up those rhizomes, and all of a sudden you may end up with twice as many plants coming back as what you started with.
Right, now where we see Scouring Rush is usually just in wetter areas of fields. It's rarely a major problem across the country. I know on some of Darren's ground, he's got some right in the low ground. There's maybe a quarter of an acre, but it's solid right in that area.
Well, when you can't get into an area and do some tillage and manage weeds and get your crop planted just right, you're going to end up with some Scouring Rush. A lot of times you'll see it creep in from wet ditches, and it'll creep out into the field with those rhizomes. It's not necessarily that it's a horrible area of your field or anything. It could be very productive ground. It's just that those rhizomes are going to keep creeping along until it finds an area that it can't get to.
But here's my favorite story with Scouring Rush. This is back probably 25, 30 years ago, and there was a railroad company that kept coming in about different herbicides to use, and they said, well, I'm going to try a bunch of atrazine on this Scouring Rush. I'm going to try a bunch of 2,4-D. And one day I asked them, when they were trying about their fourth different product, I said, what do you guys care anyway? You're the railroad. So there are a few weeds on the edge of your rail line. Who cares? And they said, well, the problem is the Scouring Rush is getting over the top of our tracks, and when our train comes along, it can't stop. It slides on this Scouring Rush. And if you've got a great big train that can't stop, that's a major problem.
That's a powerful weed.
Well, eventually what they found is that gramoxone did the very best job. Gramoxone or paraquat, when they were out there spraying that wiped it out. Now, you can't use that in crop. You could use that as a burn down, but you can't use that in crop. In crop, our best recommendation would be either permit or using a high rate of glyphosate, the highest possible labeled rate of glyphosate with the lowest possible water volume, like Darren said earlier.
Well, Scouring Rush is definitely a difficult weed to get under control, so if you have a little bit popping up in your field, in your lawn, get after it right away before it can spread.
That's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.